I'm John Kaiser at the Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver, November 13th, 2021. I am with Ian Gendall, President of DLP Resources. Ian, welcome to Vancouver.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for having me.
Ian, the company's name, DLP, stands for David Leo Pegan. What role does he play in the formation of this company and its potential for success?
Well, John, Dave Pegan's been around in the area and working in that area for over 50 plus years. He started with Caminco, and post that, he's worked for various junior companies, consulted for various junior companies on all aspects of exploration, both for the Sullivan and other deposit types. So Dave comes with all that information that no one really has for that whole district. He spent his earlier years mapping probably a large part of the southeastern BC. So he's familiar with all the rocks and the different deposit styles in that area. And outside of Caminco, in terms of their library of information on the rocks and some of the marker beds that he has through the Aldridge Formation, at which the Sullivan sits at the base of the Middle Aldridge. He's, I believe, one of the only guys that has a full set of those markers. So doing exploration, looking for another Sullivan, the most important thing is to know where you are in that stratigraphy. If you do not know where you are in that stratigraphy, you're hooped. Because you need to know from marker X to Sullivan time, it's say 400 meters. And you need to identify those markers within that drill hole. Now, if you don't have the set of markers, I know there's markers out there in photographs in various books and things, but to see the physical piece of core of the marker, Dave has the full set. So that information is really, it's invaluable, because companies coming in looking for another Sullivan, if you're not familiar with the markers, you don't know what depth you are in the hole, you can spend a lot of money and a lot of time and probably stop short and or miss it completely. So in that aspect, Dave, in terms of the Sullivan type systems, he's unbelievably knowledgeable on all of that. And because he spent so much time in the area, he's aware of other deposit types that we should be following, and it's a compilation of information that we've taken from Dave, looked at all the old maps with him, and sat down and decided, look, yeah, these are the areas we'd like to focus in on because of 1, 2, or 3 reasons, and that's essentially, I guess, how the package of ground for the Sullivan that we now hold came about. Teck was drilling that hole, as I mentioned in my talk earlier, on the DD property, which is the option they had with PJX, and it was Dave's realization that they probably stopped short in that hole. They got us into the option with PJX, and to extend that hole and actually find Sullivan time. So that information, as I said, it's really important, and Dave's experience in that area is just invaluable. I mean, we couldn't do it without Dave Pegan.
So has he extended his brain knowledge with computer technology too, so that he can see in like 4 dimensions?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or is he still the traditional paper and pencil crayon geologist whom nobody else can duplicate in terms of the deep understanding that he has?
That's where he comes from. Dave is not a computer guy. He believes in hand-drawn sections and hand-drawn plans, and he's an expert at that. I mean, the maps and the sections that come out from the work he does are just top shelf. And I've been asked the question as well. So does Dave use computers? No, he does not. so, so don't. We won't go there. But I can tell you what, he's got some fantastic maps that is really the gem of what we're trying to build.
So the DD hole that Tech drilled and that you extended gave a first deep slice into the solvent time horizon in this area. This second hole that you drilled along that trend where you added a layer of geophysical data, added more information, is what Dave is seeing. This is not just another poke hole at a deep target somewhere in the basin. Does he feel there is an elephant here and it's only a matter of time to find it, or is that still an open question?
No, I think, prior to doing any of the geophysics, we've did sections across the whole property, including DD, Moby Dick, Nazoo, the whole package. So we did sections across, Dave did sections across with the geology on it. And that was based on all the information that he has. And some of those maps are actually probably not even published in terms of the geology, because Dave's mapped that area. So we had geological sections through there prior to doing the geophysics. When we did the MT survey, following from Tech's work on that hole, well, obviously Tech's hole actually tied it in with the Dave's geology, and the extension of the MT survey over the whole area. When we combined that with Dave's sections, we said, wow, yeah, we're sitting with these anomalies and they fit with the geology. Because, it's often you get geophysics, geology in separate times, and they don't match. This matches in terms of where we expect some of those high conductive anomalies to be compared to the geology that we see. And tied in with the historic holes, as I mentioned, the RSO's 5 and RO7 hole in that area, with Dave's sections, it was a perfect fit to say, look here, if there's going to be anything of a Sullivan-type body in the area, we think we're onto it. And that's why I've been very persistent on the vectoring process that we've been doing. It's all a long shot. But the 2 holes we've drilled, we've moving in the right direction, and that gives us a lot of confirmation that, that 5-kilometer trend there is probably it. Now, where's it going to lie? We just don't know. So, this coming hole is, about 1.2 kilometers further to the northeast. We're hoping, obviously, to tag it, but, the next thing we need to see is a whole bunch of tourmaline coming in with it, and better zinc mineralization as we move towards that northeast direction. So currently we have the zinc mineralization at the lower part of 2102 hole, and we hope to get find it as we move northeast. So,
okay, so this vectoring process is working very well here.
Yes.
And this next hole may do it, but it may require one more hole to really bracket where
Correct.
the bullseye is. Now, this year you also drilled holes, a few holes into the Hungary Creek project, which is a sediment-hosted copper-silver type system. And the results were disappointing, yet you more than doubled the land position. What did you guys do beyond drill some holes that made you expand the size of the project, and how has your understanding of this project's potential changed as a result of that field work you did this year?
John, that the Hungary Creek project initially was claimed based on work that Sean Kennedy did. He found these massive sulfide boulders with quartz with it in the Hungary Creek, and that started the claiming that Jim and others did over Hungary. So we worked in that area looking for the outcrop of those massive sulfide boulders, because they were too large to say, look here, they've come from maybe 10 kilometers away. They were massive, and we prospected that area, we mapped that area, and we could not find that outcrop. I mean, obviously there's some overburden in the lower reaches of the creek that we thought maybe it's covering it. And so then we covered it with the VLF, very low frequency geophysics on the ground. And we got an anomaly at a depth we thought may make sense because it wasn't that deep. It was like 200 meters, and we should be into it. It was a flatline body in close proximity to those boulders, which had a lot of chalcopyrite in them, had good grades of copper, and had cobalt. But, I was never convinced that that was the main body, because I always thought it looked like a vent structure or a vein structure that may have been a feeder to something. Anyway, we decided to test that VLF anomaly in that area of the boulders, and we put in the 2 shallow holes to do that. And we didn't have any luck, but we did learn a lot from the stratigraphy. We in the middle creston, but we weren't at the right end of the middle creston, at what we believed. So based on that information, I mean, we sort of sat back and thought about and said, you know what, we got to go and look at the other part of that limb, which is further upstream of where we drilled. And that's when Sean Kennedy went in. He's one of the best prospectors in that area. He went in, and they actually found the sediment-hosted copper in the creston higher up, for about 4 kilometers to the west of where we drilled. So we said, well, maybe this is where we should be. And based on that information, you actually went out of our claim boundary, looking further to the south. And that's when we saw about 11 kilometers south, we found this massive package of creston quartzites with copper mineralization in it, which we now call in the 711. And for me, that was, we've got it. Now we got it. Now I was happy, because now I knew what we saw in those boulders was just possibly a structure that may have been feeding up into the creston, and it brought some fluids in and may have obviously washed down the creek. And even though they were massive, they'd moved quite a distance. But we believe now that what we see in that belt, and that's why we claim just over 34,000 hectares, we believe we've got the full package of mineralized creston along a trend there that could be up to 20 kilometers.
Now, Southeast BC has seen an awful lot of exploration in the past 100 years. And when you recognize this, what did you find in the assessment files in terms of observations with regard to that new area?
There's not a lot of information.
So this is like brand new that somehow all those prospectors managed to walk past and not recognize.
That's what I believe. I mean, I think when you see the quartzites south of the border in the Montanore Spar Lake Rock Creek area, if you find a quartzite in our crop there, unless you see copper oxide staining in some of the fractures, you would never know it actually hosts copper. It's fine disseminated chalcopyrite, borate, and chalcocite within it, and because it doesn't hold a lot of pyrite, you really don't see a lot of that oxidation that you see in other types of rocks. So I think that is part of the reason why it hasn't really been found, or hasn't been looked at least drilled in some point. I mean, as we know, Antofagasta was working in that belt on the eastern limb. They did drill an area called Silver Fox with numerous holes, 6 or 7 holes. And the area called Copper Creek, which we now hold, was held by them through Kootenay Silver. And that was a package of ground, and they did a lot of groundwork there to do. But they never drilled the Copper Creek area because, for whatever reason, they decided to leave the area. So there has been copper showings. Even old Kaminko guys noted some copper showings in some of the high areas to the north of Kimberley, but no one's ever really followed that up. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping, we've really got it all tied up now. So we're hoping to get in there in the summer and complete some of the groundwork, and then I believe that 711 prospect is probably ready for drilling in the coming summer. So that could be something we could start permitting right away, and hopefully get some holes into that in the summer.
So earlier this year, you surprised the market by optioning the Aurora Copper Moly project in Peru, which is way outside of Dave Pegan's regional area of expertise. How and why did Aurora end up inside DLP?
Yeah, so I spent 12 years in South America. I ran many programs on porphyry copper exploration for various companies. One of them being the Gendall Bulletin team up in which we were working in Southeast Ecuador, and we made those discoveries, which was called the Coriander copper belt, I guess, after we sold it off. So that all came about in the late 90s. And since then, I've been involved in exploration. I did a lot of work as a contractor consultant for Anglo American in Peru. And I'd worked the whole southern part of Peru. That was my mandate, is to look at all opportunities for them in that part of Peru. So I came with sort of that information, and I also looked at the Aurora project independently on my own in 2013. I was hopefully I'll get into the business and try and raise money and go and do it myself. But it was held with Focus Ventures. Daewoo had an option on that property with Focus in 2013-14, and they left in 2015, Daewoo. And Focus Ventures got caught up in a phosphate project to the north of Peru. So that prospect went back to the owner, and it's always sort of been on my radar. And I've never really got back to it until recently, because it's not in the main copper belt as such, with Quellaveco and that extension into Chile. It's in a different zone. So it's one of those properties that, although it was drilled by Bay Creek in 2001 with 6 holes and Vanna in 2005 with 7 holes, majority of those holes, in fact, only one, which was drilled by Vanna, went to 600 meters and intersected the whole profile of that porphyry system. So when I looked at that in 2013, I logged the only available holes. There's 3 holes available. The rest of the holes have been destroyed. And when I looked at those holes and I put it together, I realized most of them have been drilled in the upper leach part of the system. And majority of the area has been untested because they've been 300-400 meter holes. So that's why I spoke to Jim and the management team, and I said, look, I think we've got an opportunity here to pick up Aurora. I wasn't quite sure if it was still available, but I managed to trace the owner, and we did it. We did the LOI, and we finalized and everything now.
So earlier this year, Pedro Castillo was elected president. He is a populist, indigenous person, protege of a hardcore Marxist. There's a lot of concern about is Peru going to go down the road of nationalization of the mining industry? What are your thoughts on how this will all play out?
John, I'm not too worried on those issues. Obviously, it's a concern for a lot of us in terms of what is going to happen. Peru is a mining country. It's the second biggest copper producer outside of Chile. A lot of taxes are paid by mining companies to fund a lot of the other programs that are needed within Peru. I think part of it may have been a political statement, obviously to get more votes in general. But having said that, I don't think there hasn't been a change as yet as to what he's going to be doing regarding the taxes, and we're still, I guess, waiting to see what goes on with that. But there's been a lot of positive stuff. I mean, we just heard today on Sierra Metals saying they were surprised they got their permit in record time under the new government. So I think there's actually a desire to actually move exploration along and actually find new mines to supply the taxes to fund some of the other programs on the social side. So we've got a bit of a leeway now, a lead before we actually start operating. We've got obviously we've got to get the permit in place, and that's going to be, 3 to 6 months before we get all that in place. And that's only when once all that's in place, that's when our option payments start. So we've got a bit of a lead time now to see what goes on in Peru. But from speaking to others, I've just come back from Peru, and the people want us to come in and start working immediately. I've visited the community. They've been very receptive to us coming in, and I may be going back in December to finalize an agreement with them. So I think in terms of what the president's doing right now, he's obviously got a lot of responsibility to his voters to fund certain of the social programs that he's put forward, but I don't think it's really going to affect the mining as such and exploration. In fact, it may have streamlined a little bit, as we've recently heard from Sierra Metals. And there's also other companies that are picking up large tracts of ground further to the north and further to the east of the Andean belt. So I think I'm not that worried just yet. And South American countries have been up and down in terms of elections and who comes in at certain times, but I don't think Peru wants to go back to incredibly high royalties and destroy the mining sector.
So your bigger concern is that Captain Pegan will harpoon Moby Dick and never give you a chance to do anything with Aurora.
Exactly, that's right. That is my concern. I mean, that's what we said. We said if we harpoon this whale, then I think maybe out of the business in other sectors.
Well, there's this wonderful thing called a spin out.
Yeah, that's true.
What you do with that.
That's
and you have
exactly.
two potential spin outs, Hungary Creek and Aurora. So that's what makes DLP Resources a very interesting company. I've been speaking with Ian Gendall, president of DLP Resources. Thank you, Ian, for participating in the Metals Investor Forum.
Thanks very much, John. Thanks for having me.